Okay, are we live? I think maybe we're live. All right. Hey folks, Chuck Holton here. Thanks for coming on this live broadcast with me. Today is November 8th, and it is about 5:30 in the evening. I wanted to point out right back behind me there, you can see the walls of the old city. That's those lit up walls right there. That's the old city of Jerusalem. And you can't quite see it because it's not lit up, but right about there, there's a tower, and it's a couple hundred yards away, but that is the Armenian church that is right next to what they believe was the upper room where Jesus took the Last Supper. And it's just right there. It's pretty amazing. I tell you what, being here is an experience. The war notwithstanding, being able to come here and to, just everywhere you go, see biblical history come alive. The Kidron Valley, Masada, just the Dead Sea, the Sea of Tiberias or the Sea of Galilee. So much of the Bible, and it's just there, and it's amazing. It's really cool. If you haven't had a chance to go to Israel, it's one of those things that you really ought to do before you die. And if you can't, that's okay, because I'm going to try to bring you as much of it as I can as I spend my time here covering the war. So thank you very much, everybody, for watching. If you would like to, just get this out of the way real quick, if you'd like to help us help other people, we're taking the money that gets donated to the Hot Zone and using it to help people that are in need, that we run into as I travel around the world covering wars and disasters. And there are a lot of wars and disasters to cover. One of the things about being a war correspondent is you always have job security, because people, unfortunately, are going to keep killing each other, and there's always another hurricane, fire, flood, earthquake, or something like that. So I'm excited to be here. I'm a little tired. I've been driving all day long. I had kind of a frustrating day, and so I'll explain to you what happened. There are still about 100 people, a little over 100 people, that have not been accounted for from the, thank you, Rich, from the October 7th attacks. I mean, they're even, it's been more than a month. Thank you, Cindy. And since it's been more than a month and they're still searching for these people, people are starting to wonder, like, where in the world are these people? How could they be, just disappeared? Well, part of it is because Hamas has not really provided much in the way of proof of life of the hostages that they took, and Hamas didn't give a number of the people that they stole. So right now the official number is like 244. Lorena, thank you. And the unofficial number could be 100 people more than that. We don't know. But they also don't know how many people are dead, and that's because Hamas made a habit of burning things. They would kill a bunch of people and throw them in a room, and then set the room on fire, or they would put a bunch of people in a room and set the people on fire and kill them that way. Horrific to even think about. I saw a guy get burned to death one time, and I don't ever want to see that again. It was in South Africa. It was horrific. That's the kind of thing you don't forget. So the people that are missing, Israel is doing whatever they can to try to find them. And so today I went down to Netivot, which is right along the Gaza border, on the eastern border of Gaza. It's only a couple kilometers from the border. And so as I got closer down there, there were lots and lots of artillery firing on Gaza that I was driving by. Of course, I can't film that stuff because we can't tell bad people things they don't need to know, like where those guns are. But it was it was substantial. There was a substantial volume of fire. Thank you, Jimmy. That's very kind. Priscilla. It was a lot of fire. And so as I got closer, of course, you get more and more checkpoints. You've got to show your card. But I have this press card that they issued me, and I can pretty much, I'm supposed to be able to go wherever I need to go within reason and do my job. They've done a background check, and they have given me permission to commit journalism anywhere in Israel as long as I'm not telling people things they don't need to know. Okay. So I got down there, and the reason I was going is because there was reportedly a car graveyard where they've taken all the cars that were burned and wrecked and shot up and everything, and they put them all in one place, like a big junkyard. And I wanted to see that. I'd seen some pictures of it and stuff, so I wanted to go see it. So I drove down there. Plus, I have to say, having a hard time getting permission to go do certain stories where I need certain interviews or I need to get into certain places that are restricted areas. You know, you have to get permission to go into those places. For example, they say that millions of gallons of fresh water every day to the people of southern Gaza going across the border. And that's a great story. That's a story that needs to be told. Thank you, Judy. But it's, and thank you, MJ. Wow, that's great. That's a story that needs to be told, right? I mean, that's a very important story. If you're concerned about winning the information war, Israel should be jumping up and down on that story and having busloads of journalists down there to see it. Nobody's doing it. So I have been calling the press office and leaving messages with everybody I know up there. You know, can I get permission to go into this water plant and see the plant that's pumping water into Gaza? Shouldn't be that hard. Shouldn't be a big deal. And I just never heard anything back. They just, I mean, I know they're busy, but come on, this is their job, right? Public Information Office, get some information out to the public. That's what I'm here for. Give me, let me in. And not hearing back from anybody. So while I was waiting, plus not only that, I've been begging them to let me get into Gaza, and they tell me I'm on the list. I'm on the list. Thank you guys, Melissa and Raphael. They say I'm on the list, but so far I haven't been called. And so while I was waiting, I figured, well, how hard can it be to get into a junkyard? You know, I mean, it's just a bunch of shot up cars and blown up cars and stuff. So I'll go in there. And while I'm waiting, that'll be a decent story. So I drove down there today. It's about 2 hours to get down there. I get down there and I find the place, and I show up, and they got this couple of guys sitting under a little awning, a little tent. And they're like, where's your permit? And I said, here's my credentials. And they said, no, you need permission from the IDF to come in here, IDF spokesman. I said, oh, well, nobody told me that, so let me call him real quick. So I texted the IDF spokesman, didn't hear anything back. Texted the other IDF spokesman, didn't hear anything back. Waited 30 minutes, didn't hear anything back. So finally I just called those guys, and one of them actually answered the phone and knows me by name. Hey, Chuck, how's it going? Well, I'm trying to get into this junkyard, and they're telling me I need permission from you to do it. And he's like, what? Well, that's dumb. And I'm like, that's what I thought, but that's what the guy says here. So can you talk to him? He said, yeah, sure. Thank you, Virginia. So I hand the guy the phone. The IDF spokesman talks to him and tells him, let this guy in. He's just filming the cars. It's no big deal. It's not like there's anything top secret in there. And the guy says, no, I'm not going to let him in. And he's like, well, you just told him he needed permission from me to get in. I'm giving him permission. And the guy's like, I don't want to get in trouble. My boss is not here. And so I got to wait till my boss gets back. And I said, hey, that's no problem. How long is he going to be? He said, probably 20 minutes. I said, I'll wait. That's fine. I'll wait. So I waited and I waited and I waited. About an hour goes by. And then the guy comes walking over to me and he says, hey, you can't come in. My boss called and he said you can't come in. And I'm like, dude, like, I drove all the way down here from Jerusalem to get a shot of some blown up cars. How hard can this be? And he's like, no, sorry, can't come in. So I called the IDF guy back, and he was like pulling his hair out, and he's like, all right, let me make some phone calls. I'll get this done. So he's trying to work that out. In the meantime, I went to the guy and I said, look, I've got to get some footage for my story. I'm going to get fired, and I'm here trying to help you. I'm trying to help Israel. I want to tell your story. I've got to be allowed to film something. I'm making television. And he said, well, you can film, you just can't come in. And I'm like, okay, so can I film from the top of that little berm over there where I can see down, over the junkyard? And he goes, okay. So I went over there and I put my tripod on there was a piece of machinery up there, stuck my tripod on that and kind of teetered on this little thin, little narrow berm that was pushed up over there, standing in the sticker bushes, and managed to get a little stand up and make a little piece that'll be on my podcast episode for today. If you come back in a little while, I'll put that up. And I got some footage of the cars from there, but I couldn't get down and get close-ups and, really do it right. But I did the best I could. Should have brought my drone, but probably would have got shot if I'd tried to fly my drone. And, I waited and waited, and then I started looking at the time, and I'm like, if I'm going to get back in time to do my live broadcasting, I've got to leave. So I was like, all right, I'm out. Forget it. Got my car, drove 2 hours back, had a nice conversation with the public affairs guy of the IDF, and I just said, look, man, if there's nothing you want me to film, then I will go home, because this is your war. It's not mine. I care about Israel. I want to help Israel. I'm here to help. I'm away from my family for a month. But if you're going to work against me, there's no reason for me to be here. There's lots of places in the world I can do reporting from. I don't have to be here. So I'm not being threatening. I'm just saying I've literally put in every day for, a place to go, someplace, and you tell me I'm on the list or whatever, but nothing happens. Nothing comes of it. He said, well, we do this, press thing every day where we take all the press out and, we schedule something every day. And I said, yeah, you go to a briefing by a college professor, or you go to a site where there was a battle. I'm making television. And if there's 70 other journalists there, everybody's jockeying for position and trying to get the shot, and you got journalists walking through your shot all the time. It just doesn't work. Not only that, I don't want to get the same story every other journalist here is getting. That's not why I'm here. And you ought to let us spread out a little bit so that we're not all just getting the same thing. And he said, yeah, I know. He said, look, we're just doing our best here. And I said, I know you are. I know. And I'm not mad. I'm just, I'm not able to get the kind of stories that I should be able to get. There are some great stories to be told out here, and that would get great play, get a lot of money, and a lot of attention drawn to Israel, but they're not allowing us in to do it. So that was my rant for today. It was a little frustrating, but it is what it is. It's very common doing this job to have that happen, because 2 reasons. First of all, thank you, Kathy. I look forward to you being here. First of all, the people that you're dealing with when you go to a war zone, they weren't in a war zone up until just a little while ago. So it's not like they're old hands at this. They're always in the process of trying to figure it out. And so you got to give them a little grace. You got to be patient. I've learned to be very patient and not be so driven by my agenda. Thank you, Benny. That I have to get this, and this is the only thing I can do. And I've learned not to be a jerk about it, because that's a good way to get shot or kicked out. But at the same time, you've got to be aggressive. And you got to be a little audacious, and be willing to maybe get in trouble and film some things, that maybe they don't want you to film. The other reason that it's hard in a war zone is because very often people are scared. It's a time of uncertainty, and they just don't know what's right. They don't know what they should allow to happen and shouldn't allow to happen. Whoa. And so they default to saying no. Those are the ones that drive me crazy. People who just say no because it's easier, when if they would think about it a little bit, it would be much more profitable for them and for me, for everybody, if they said yes. And just like that guy today. Who cares if I'm filming some burned out cars? Big deal. I'm not going to try to take them home with me. So what's the big deal? And it's not like no other journalist had been in there. There have been other journalists in there. So why not say yes? Well, it's just easier to say no, and he's afraid he's going to get in trouble. So since he's afraid, he just didn't do anything. Wouldn't just say no. To me, that is a form of cowardice, and I absolutely loathe all forms of cowardice. Cowardice, to me, is the reason why we have wars and disasters in the first place. It almost always comes down to some form of cowardice on the part of some leader somewhere. So, today was frustrating for that reason, but I got enough to do my job, so I'm not going to get fired or anything. One of the interesting things about this graveyard of cars is that it's not just a graveyard of cars. It's also a graveyard of people. Going back to the search for missing Israelis, some of those 100 people that are still missing, their remains are in those cars. They were so badly burned that they're not even recognizable as human anymore. They're just a melted puddle on what's left of the floorboard or something. And so what they've had to do is actually recruit journalists from here in Jerusalem. Archaeologists from here in Jerusalem, and bring them down there to that car graveyard and have them sift through the rubble of these cars, sift through the wreckage, and take samples and do DNA sampling and stuff, and try to find more people. And they've actually found 10 more people they've identified that died in the attacks at the Re'im Music Festival that they didn't know were dead. So one wonders, when you look out across that vast sea of cars, and it's hundreds, how many bodies are still in there? How many people's remains have yet to be even discovered in there? And you could tell walking up on that junkyard, it's the only junkyard I've ever been to that smelled like decayed human flesh, burned human flesh. And that's, if you have never smelled burned human flesh, it's a smell you don't ever want to smell. And decaying human flesh is even worse. But there were a lot of flies, and you can tell there's still residue of a lot of bodies in there. It's really bad. So that was most of my day, just waiting on that. I just got back here. And I want to go through some of the other news. In Ashkelon, where I spent almost a week, not last week, but the week before, Ashkelon is in the south, about 5 miles from the border with Gaza. And they get lots and lots of rocket attacks there, as you can imagine, because it's very, very close. And Hamas is still firing rockets. I show you every day this app that I've got on my phone here. It's called, I can't pronounce actually what it's called, TZOFAR, SOFAR, something like that. Maybe that's shofar. Yeah, maybe that's what that is, shofar. It just occurred to me that TZOFAR would be shofar. And it makes sense because it's like, a horn going off. There's a list of all of the rocket fire from today. Most of them are around the Gaza envelope. This is from last night. I think I might have shown you that one already. But that's around Tel Aviv. So they're still firing a lot of rockets, which is mind-boggling when you look at when I listen to the artillery today, because the car graveyard was just like maybe a quarter mile from a battery of heavy artillery. And they were just constant, boom, 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 firing artillery rounds into Gaza. Now, those things are pretty accurate, and so they're hitting what they aim at. I can virtually guarantee you that. They had several thousand more people today apparently leave through the humanitarian corridor that they set up. There were some breaking news I just announced on Newsmax on my last hit right before this, that Qatar is pushing, oh, thank you, Celio. Qatar is pushing for a 24 to 48 hour ceasefire in exchange for 15 hostages. Now, let me explain to you why that would be a mistake. You probably remember, thank you, Alpha. Anna. You probably remember back during the Reagan administration, if you're as old as I am, Reagan used to there was a big problem with them taking hostages, especially in Lebanon. And Ronald Reagan would always say, we do not negotiate with terrorists. And why don't you negotiate with terrorists? Because you make more terrorists that way. When terrorists take hostages and you negotiate to give them something in exchange for their hostages, what you do is you guarantee that there will be more hostages taken, because hostages become currency. It becomes an effective strategy for terrorists to take hostages. If you're as old as I am, you might remember back in the 80s, it was a big, 70s and 80s, hijacking airplanes was a big deal. A lot of people around the world would hijack airplanes. Terrorists would hijack airplanes, and they would do so to try to gain, thank you, Troy, try to gain attention for their cause, whatever their cause was. So if their cause was the Shining Path movement, they would hijack an airplane and force it to, what was that? There are these weird guys that drive around in vans, drive circles around Jerusalem, just blaring out party music from big speakers on the roof of their vans. And they're Hasidic Jews. And so it's really kind of a weird look, but they're just like, it's like a party bus, man. They are just partying all. And finally I asked one of those guys, like, what are you guys doing? Like, why do you do this? And they're like, oh, well, we're trying to call the Messiah down. We're trying to get the Messiah to come back. And so, we're making it sound like a lot of fun down here. So the Messiah will want to come back. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I don't know if that's actually true, but that's what he told me. And he was a young guy, so I don't know that he would know, but maybe he was just pulling my chain. Anyway, I think that's what that was, that noise. So these guys would hijack airplanes. And so obviously the people on the airplane are not the people who are causing the problem that these guys are on about. But they're going to take those people captive and hold them hostage and threaten to kill them unless their demands are met. So-and-so gets released from prison, or we get, whatever contract we want, ratified, whatever it was. And all of a sudden it stopped. Do you hear about, ever since 9/11, do you hear about planes getting hijacked anymore? Just doesn't happen. They don't even try. Thank you, Nelson. They don't try because A, we've got much better security now, so it's harder to do. Not impossible though, they can still do it. But sometime back in the 80s, two things happened. One, the government decided we're not going to negotiate with with terrorists who take hostages. We're just going to kill them. And so going and taking or hijacking an airplane went from being, thank you, Coca-Cola. Yeah, well, that's true. They went from hijacking an airplane and getting, a bunch of publicity and maybe getting their demands met to it's a suicide mission. You're going to die. The other thing that happened was back then there were only 3 news agencies, NBC, ABC, and CBS. And the heads, I'm told, I read about this in a book about hijacking, that the heads of those 3 agencies got together and sat down and said, you know what, we're part of this problem because when we give these guys publicity, it encourages them to do it more and it causes copycat events. So we need to stop giving them publicity. And so they just agreed between the 3 of those guys, we're not going to report on hijackings anymore. That was it. And you know what? Hijackings stopped. We've seen various examples of that around the world. There was a case in Austria where people were committing suicide by jumping in front of the subway train, and it would get, make the news. And so more and more people were doing it. And then the news, the country, I think, outlawed it and said you cannot report the names of people that do this. And when they did that, it stopped. People stopped jumping in front of subway trains. I'm reminded of that when I look at what's happening in my home country of Panama right now, because there are hundreds of thousands of people that are angry about a mine out in the jungle that takes up about less than 0.5% of the forested land in Panama, middle of nowhere. And yeah, you made the live stream. Thank you very much, Teresa. But they're very angry about this mine being out there for a couple different reasons. And they're being played really by the labor unions and by the left, but nevertheless, they are protesting the mine by standing in the middle of the street and closing down the streets. Now, if you ask me my opinion, that there's no difference between standing in the middle of the street and blocking traffic and making traffic back up for hours and hours and hours, taking a trip that would take 20 minutes into a 3 or 4 hour slog, making it virtually impossible for people to get to the hospital if they need to, impossible for elderly people to get their medications, for people to go to the store and get food. They just can't move about. So you paralyze the entire country of Panama, which unfortunately only has one road going through coast to coast, end to end. Thank you, Crawfish and Anna. But because it only, they shut the whole country down, and it's been shut down now for months, well, people are getting really fed up. Yesterday, there was a man, I meant to have the video of this to show you, but I didn't get it in time. Yesterday, there was a Panamanian man, he's kind of elderly, 70-something years old, who got stuck at one of these blockades where people are dancing around the streets and won't get out of the way. And he was so angry that he got out and walked up and just shot